So, the last time that we had a reading, we briefly mentioned about the American Indians. Remember, the American Indians were living here. You had several tribes. You had the Wyandot, the Shawnee, the Miami, the Ottawa, and several other tribes. So, as these American settlers came in, they had purchased the land from the government or from land prospectors. And so they owned the land according to their country. And that government has purchased the land from the American Indians. However, they didn't pay a lot for the land, and they really didn't go to every tribe. One tribe would go ahead and sell the land for money or guns or horses or whatever they needed, but there might be 3 or 4 tribes that lived on that land as well, and they knew nothing about the sale, and they didn't have any sort of say in it. They didn't even know that the land had been sold. It was new to them. So these Native Americans are going to become very upset after a while because they feel like they are being kicked off their land. And they kind of are. They hadn't really sold their land. They didn't have the concept of even owning land. Land was to be shared, much like if you and I go to a park today. And I said, I'm sorry, you can't play over here by the swings. I purchased the swings area. You are not allowed in this area. You would find that kind of odd. So, keep that in mind. So, we're going to go ahead and listen to her read aloud about the life changes for American Indians.
Imagine standing in the Northwest Territory. Look to your right and see the determined, hard-working, focused pioneer who is sacrificing so much to claim land and settle and own a piece of property. Now, look to your left and see one of the men from an American Indian tribe who has been walking these lands for many years. He looks at this land so differently from the one on your right. He feels land cannot be owned by one person. It is to be owned by the whole tribe for hunting and planting to feed every member of the community. He believes the land is for everyone. With such conflicting views and values, there was bound to be conflict. That is exactly what happened. Since it wasn't just these 2 men, but many men who stood next to them on both sides. All saw this land in such a different way. Boundaries were drawn, dividing tribes and settlements, but compromise was hard for both. Sadly, conflict led to war. War led to bloodshed. The British were also involved. They were still opposed to the United States. They saw this conflict as an opportunity. They sold ammunition and weapons to the tribes and encouraged attacks. One battle took place in 1786. A military event led by General Benjamin Logan seized and burned 13 villages of the Shawnee tribe. Chief Malantha was captured and then killed. This angered the Shawnee and caused them to increase their attacks. It wasn't always the American Indians who felt loss. One of the battles with the highest United States loss was with the American Indians. It was St. Clair's defeat. General Arthur St. Clair led the United States against 1,000 warriors from several tribes. Most of St. Clair's men died in this battle.
All right, so you can see where there's going to be a lot of conflict. There's going to be a lot of battles, and that's going to be fought over a series of years. What's going to happen is there's going to be a huge battle called the Battle of Fallen Timbers. And after that battle, many Native American tribes accept the defeat. And while they don't want to leave their land, they know it's kind of losing ground. They know that the settlers are going to win, and so many Native Americans will give up their land and move west. There are some, however, who will continue to fight, and they will come and fight in a new war that the United States will have in a few years. So I'm going to pause this and I'm going to bring up another reading for us. Okay, so as discussed, we have the Battle of Fallen Timbers, and you can see on the map here, it's right up here in northwestern Ohio near Lake Erie. It's up in the Canton area, and if you don't know where Canton is, it's where you can find the Football Hall of Fame today. Obviously, this was more than 200 years ago, so it is not there at the time. So this battle is called the Battle of Fallen Timbers for a reason. Timbers means trees. And there was a tornado that had went through just a few days before the battle began. So all the trees or timbers had fallen during that tornado. So it's called the Battle of Fallen Timbers, as a way to remember that that tornado had went through. The Native Americans are going to lose this battle. Okay, so the Indians are going to lose the battle. The Americans will win the battle. And after then, they're going to create a treaty. A treaty is an agreement. Okay, it's a formal end to a war where they agree. And the Native Americans or the Indians are going to agree to certain rules, and the American settlers are going to agree to another set of rules. And it still doesn't go very well. Later on in history, you will see there's just one more big push by the Native Americans to try to get their land back, and that push ends up being unsuccessful. So we're going to listen to her read this aloud.
A turning point in the conflict between American Indians and settlers of the Northwest Territory took place after the Battle of Fallen Timbers. General Anthony Wayne and his men defeated the Shawnee tribe led by Blue Jacket. The American Indians knew a change was needed. It was time to seek peace. In January of 1795, various tribal leaders from the Northwest Territory came to meet with Wayne at Fort Greenville. It took 8 months of negotiating. The Treaty of Greenville was finalized on August 3, 1795. A treaty is a formal agreement to end a war. According to this treaty, the tribes agreed to let go of all land outside of northwestern Ohio. However, the American Indians would still be allowed to hunt in this area. On the other hand, the settlers agreed to give up any claim to the land that was to the north and west of this line. The tribes also had to agree to let the settlers build outposts in their territory. The tribes were also given $20,000 worth of goods for signing. Also, the United States agreed to give those who signed $9,500 yearly. The tribes had to decide how to divide these amounts. Not all signed the treaty. This treaty created change. However, conflict continued.
So, as she explained to you, Chief Blue Jacket was in charge, and that battle was lost. Blue Jacket is a chief who actually is a white man who was adopted by the American Indians. So, he's kind of an interesting figure if you would like to learn a little bit more about him. So, everything north and west, this would be like Michigan. Okay, Michigan and Indiana, those areas, um, those would still allow the Native Americans to live there, the Indians to live there, and they still can hunt down in here, kind of like going into the woods to hunt. They just couldn't build their villages down here. The problem is not every tribe signed this treaty, this agreement. And some tribes will actually say because they didn't sign it, they don't have to live by the rules. And so that conflict is going to come back. So this was in 1795, and it's going to come back Not quite 20 years later in a great big battle, and you'll learn more about that later. Okay, if you would like to listen to this video again and watch it again, you may. Otherwise, it's time to do your question.